So what Laurent and I are here to talk to you about is a selling motion that actually can help stack the odds in our favor. A selling motion that actually can increase your deal sizes to your clients, to speed your execution of deals in a frictionless environment. It could turn procurement from an 11th hour impediment to your deals into an ally, and then also marshal in a coordinated way the resources of not only your team and the Ingram team, but also AWS and IBM. So last year, IBM and AWS embarked on a historic partnership. It was one of the biggest partnerships in the history of both companies, and it had 4 basic tenets. The first one was with our consulting group. This is a relationship that we had with AWS in terms of trying to take more of our clients' applications to the AWS cloud, and there's massive investments on both sides to speed that process up. The second tenet is what we're talking about today, which is selling IBM software and maximizing its value on the AWS infrastructure. We also have a hybrid cloud vision. IBM from the beginning has said we're going to have computing on-prem and we're going to have computing in the public clouds, and we had a massive bet that we took when we bought Red Hat. And Red Hat OpenShift is the connective tissue from IBM and Red Hat that brings together the 2 parts of the hybrid cloud strategy. And AWS is embracing that. AWS has a new offering called Red Hat OpenShift service on Amazon. That's called ROSA. It is a managed Kubernetes service, managed OpenShift service that really simplifies things for our customers. And lastly, in this hybrid cloud vision, the mainframe is not to be left out. It's another server, and a very, very important server, but it's a server that needs to be modernized, and needs to be modernized with new and native web interface ways, and not having to rely on a skill set that is not really prevalent in the marketplace. So if anyone wants to talk about any of these other aspects of the partnership, I can put you in touch with the people at IBM that deal with that, and we could talk after this pitch. So double-clicking on what we're here to talk about today is selling IBM on the AWS market. 2 aspects of that. One is we never had our software up on the AWS marketplace, and in a lot of ways in this new era of cloud, we have real important partnerships. And in the past, some of IBM would look at AWS as a competitor. We have our own cloud, but Arvind Krishna uses an example, and he says, Time Warner Discovery actually just did a massive deal with Amazon Prime, and they put all their content and made it available on Amazon Prime. They have a streaming service called Max, and they're not shutting that down. They're going to try to maximize that for the marketplace, but they want to put their content where people want to consume it. And that's exactly what we're doing over here with software. Software is our content. And no one argues when Red Hat has to be ubiquitous and go across all clouds. Same thing with IBM software. So this partnership is a uniquely software play. I've got people on my team that are on the hardware side, that are on the cloud side, that don't embrace this partnership, right? This is a software play. And we've got many, many dedicated technical teams from both sides that are trying to make this thing successful. And product integration, that's another big piece, because when I talk to people, this is not just a transaction mechanism. We're working on making the software run and install on the AWS cloud in a very frictionless environment. We have these templates that are push-button templates where in your order off the marketplace, it provisions in seconds and minutes. And then we're also looking at best-in-class enablement for our partners, for our sellers, to make sure that they embrace this motion. And we were the AWS Partner of the Year last year.
Okay, thanks. So, before we dive into Cloud Marketplace, AWS Marketplace, I just kind of wanted to level set to explain the thinking at the high level as to what's going on over here. So you got 2 graphs here. On the left-hand side is Q3 2022. You can see AWS had about 34% share. IBM Cloud sitting at about 3% share. And by the way, plenty of good things about IBM Cloud too. So feel free to come by to the IBM booth, because I manage that one too. So feel free to drop by. On the right-hand side is a longer trend, right? From Q4 2017 to Q4 2022, you can see what the breakout is. And you can see Amazon has about 34% share over that whole period of time. It's hovering between 30 and 35%. Looks pretty much like it's just chugging along. Microsoft has gained, Google has come up a little bit, and so forth. So from my perspective, when I look at that, I think, okay, Amazon's not really growing that much. But let's take a look at the actual dollars. If you look at this from 2017 to 2022, look at the billions. These are millions of dollars. So you're talking about, in 2020, a business that was worth $45 billion on AWS. And imagine taking that business and growing it 37% to $62 billion. And now grow that another 29% to $80 billion. So these are the growth rates and the astronomical amounts of money being exchanged on AWS. And so IBM, for its part, says, okay, we'd love to participate in that. We want our business partners to be able to take advantage of that. And so that's the excitement in all of this, is that IBM is now making all of its products available, or not all of its products, but many, many of its products available on AWS so that they too can enjoy these growth rates and also extend their offerings to the business partners for them to be able to take advantage of all of these growth rates and be where a lot of the clients and end users are, which is here on AWS. So before I go any further, I'd like to just start by asking, does anybody know here what an EDP is, an enterprise discount program with AWS, by show of hands? Okay, some of you know what EDP is. So Amazon is pretty smart. What they do is they say, look, to a client, let's take McDonald's as an example. McDonald's is going to use some AWS. And so they'll say, okay, McDonald's, what's your estimated spend? Let's say it comes out to about $10 million. And they say, okay, make you a deal. If you commit to the $10 million over the course of the year, we will give you an incentive. And the incentive is sizable such that McDonald's will go ahead and sign that deal. Now, they have to true up. They have to spend that $10 million over the course of the year. There's no getting out of it. But in exchange for getting that $10 million, there is a sizable incentive. And so a lot of end users are doing this. A lot of end users are signing up and saying yes. And they are committed to spend and allocate this money to AWS. I think right now it's about over $80 billion that's committed through AWS, which is huge. And now, does anybody, I guess everyone's heard of the AWS Marketplace. Is everyone familiar with it? By show of hands, who's familiar? Yeah, most people are familiar. So what AWS says is they have their own marketplace. And on that marketplace, you have numerous vendors, numerous ISVs. I mean, these are the stats directly from Amazon. Over 2 million active subscriptions, 12,000 products, 2,000 ISVs, over 325,000 customers. I actually created this slide probably about 6 weeks ago. From the time I created this slide, which was, I literally pulled this from the AWS page, it already increased. It's over now 330,000 customers. So it's growing by gangbusters, so much so that my slides are outdated by the time it's time to present them. So they're really growing huge. And so what IBM has said is, now our products, be they subscription license, be they SaaS, are now available for procurement on the AWS Marketplace, which is really unbelievable. And we're going to get into how the business partners can take advantage of this, but it's really, really unbelievable. So back to the example with McDonald's, if they have a $10 million committed spend, they can spend up to 25% of that commitment on the marketplace, and it counts. So in that scenario, $2.5 million can be spent on whatever's on the marketplace, Adobe, Red Hat, and yes, IBM. So it's very, very cool. For those of you who are concerned that, hey, am I missing the boat? This is all brand new. So there's a curve here on the bottom in terms of where we are. This is very much in the infancy. IBM only just announced this in, what was it, May of last year, I think, Vinny? So this is brand new, so don't feel like you've missed the boat. We're really on the cusp, on the very starting point of this whole motion. So AWS actually commissioned a study, and they interviewed 12 ISVs, and they surveyed 60 additional ISVs to get their perspective on the marketplace. Like, how is it going? What's the benefit for them? And these were the results. Customers spent 80% more when they were transacting on the AWS Marketplace due to the ability to draw down on their EDP commitment. The pipelines increased by 20%. The win rates went from 22 to 28, and the sales cycles went down from 5 months down to 3 months. And I can tell you, so far, Ingram Micro, we've closed 2 deals so far. So it's, like I say, it's in its infancy. It's brand new. I'll tell you that the deals that we close were not 3 months and 5 months. We're talking like days and weeks, if that. It moved fast. And part of it is because the money's been allocated, the budget is there, and they need to transact. And by the way, it's use it or lose it. So if the money is not spent, the money is forfeited. And so therefore, you'd better close the deal. So a lot of wheels are very much greased. You could read the quotes for yourself, but I kind of like this one. AWS is our sun, and investing in AWS Marketplace allows us to get close enough to orbit the sun while being where our customers want to transact. And that's very true. The clients are there. You can see what the growth rates are. And that's the motivation behind what IBM is trying to do. They're really trying to take advantage of all this growth and be where the clients are and include the VADs, the business partners, in this motion.
So I just want to review a few terms to just put us on even footing. We talked about the CDP, right? These are these discount programs, and I've heard people talk about them as being similar to IBM ELAs, but in as much that they're both commitment contracts, they're very, very different because IBM ELAs actually take a future spend and pull it all up front, and so they transact up front. What AWS does is they take these future commitments or IOUs, and then the customers have to make good on it over time. So that represents and that opens up the opportunity for us to play into that committed spend. And so we had a deal at the end of last year where it was going to be going down a traditional route with one of the Ingram partners, and the procurement came back. It was on the Thursday before the end of the year and said, I'm only at $500,000 of my $1 million commitment. In a couple of days, I'm going to be charging $1 million. I have $500,000 that's going to be sort of burnt in a hole. Could we actually use this for this purchase? It was on the marketplace with a simple change of a special bid. We were able to then have this client utilize this spend that would have been wasted spend. And so that there you see sort of the power of the motion, and that's what an EDP provides. A public listing, when we list our software on there, we hang out a shingle on the marketplace. And I always think it's important to talk about this because before I knew the inner workings of this, I said, well, can't we be disintermediated, IBM and our partners, if people just buy off that public listing? But the public listing is at list price, and the public listing is a single configuration. So if you're a client and you want to have any type of discounting, and if you want to change the configuration, you're not going to be buying off a public listing. Sure, they may have a developer that swipes their credit card and just pulls some of that stuff down. That's where we see people consuming the public listings. But for any of our enterprise software, we wind up seeing it go through what's called a private offer, which is a customized offer that we control the pricing on and that we offer on the marketplace. A private offer through one of our partners, like you guys in the room, it's called a channel partner private offer. And we've plumbed it so that the workflow, and you'll see the workflow later, Laurent will take you through it, not only do partners play in it, but also the VAD as well. And then lastly, there's a registration system that is, Laurent will go over incentives. It's not really keyed on incentives, but it's the ACE registration system is AWS's portal, which if you want to unlock any of the resources on the AWS side, whether it's help at the account level, whether it's funding for technical proof points, then we would register in ACE and Ingram and other people on the IBM side could help you do that. So any questions about these terms? So this is the current product set from an IBM perspective that is on the marketplace. And as Laurent says, things change so much that over last week that we put these slides together, these two things down here in light blue are actually on the marketplace. I didn't want to mess up the formatting of the slide and screw that up, so I just colored them in blue. But I'll point out a couple things over here. One is this is not our entire software portfolio. First, a lot of our software portfolio is perpetual license. Perpetual license doesn't play in this. Perpetual license, a client could always buy a license and bring your own license, as they always could on AWS, but you're not going to be able to burn down your EDP. This is SaaS and subscription. So anything that says SaaS on it is a SaaS offering where IBM provides the management to it. Anything that says subscription is just that, or anything that doesn't say SaaS is a subscription. Second thing to point out right now is we've rolled this out in the United States as the first market. The next market to come is EMEA. We're going into EMEA, we're going into the UK, we're going to Germany, France, and Denmark in the third quarter. And then there's going to be other markets that will be reached over there. So this is a US-based play right now. And then I mentioned my other my other responsibility. IBM is re-engineering a bunch of their products to make it much simpler to consume, and that's what I've marked with the product-led growth. And if anyone has any questions after this, we could talk about that.
Thanks. So Vinny mentioned subscription license versus SaaS. So what's nice is in the subscription license, right, you have the subscription, you can bring it, it's actually pre-imaged to run on AWS, but the management of that really is either on the customer internally or staff, or they have to pay perhaps a partner, but somebody has to manage that. And then the infrastructure on which this license runs is, in the case of AWS, it's on AWS. And so it's a little bit disparate. The nice thing with SaaS is that IBM will manage the whole thing for you. The software, the management, the infrastructure, it's all built into the price. And when you look at that price, I think IBM has done some studies, and it's actually a lower total cost of ownership if you do the deal as a SaaS, as opposed to as a subscription license that runs on the infrastructure. So, and the other thing that's actually nice about the SaaS is, although the value is higher, the total cost of ownership is lower, but that entire value the business partner will now participate in, which is a huge plus, lower total cost of ownership for the client. And then the last thing also is that that burns down the EDP, so the entire value of the deal goes towards the EDP, which I think is really quite nice. A lot of times when we're trying to sell software, right, I'm sure everyone in this room has probably heard some of these objections, right? I don't have the team, I don't have the capacity, you got to wait to hire more people, it's a hassle. That's the beauty with the IBM SaaS. All of those objections kind of go away because the SaaS is really self-contained. So I know that IBM is really positioning SaaS very heavily, but again, subscription license and SaaS are both available to you. Okay, I want to jump into the margins a little bit. So what's the motivation for the business partners? How much can they possibly make from all of this? So the way IBM has it structured is first to register, not first to register. So just to be clear, this is completely separate from Partner Plus. So for all the IBM business partners in the room who are familiar with Partner Plus, this is a completely separate program. So get the Partner Plus thing out of your mind. This is a completely different route to market. And the rules are as follows. The first to register, if it's a subscription license or a SaaS, is 25% to the business partner. If it's an upgrade, it's 20%. Now, if the business partner is not the first to register, then there's what they call a 10% decrement, meaning instead of being 25 and 20, it's actually 15 and 10. First to register is the one who gets it. Sometimes I get the question, hey, what about a registration? If I registered something for, but I didn't say it was specifically to hyperscaler, will it still carry over? It still carries over. So the reg is the reg is the reg. IBM does ask that you put, if you're registering a deal, that you note that it's for hyperscaler in the name of the reg, but it counts. And so what's the process? We're going to get really deeper into the weeds, into the mechanics of how this all works, but just at the high level, right? The first thing is identify the opportunity. You have a client. Do they have an EDP? They do. Would they like to go ahead and transact? The first thing that you want to do is the part number actually available on AWS? And so you check that on the seismic link. And at the end of this presentation, we'll include the links. And I think you're going to get a copy of this. So it's very easy to find what are all the different part numbers available on AWS. So first thing is it available? Yes. You'll register the opportunity. You'll enter the hyperscaler as the prefix to the solution. And then finally, we'll give you a quote. So if you're working through Ingram Micro, right, we will give you a quote for that opportunity, which you can then turn around and quote to your client. Questions on this?
And so as Laurent mentioned, it's the same deal registration as a normal
selling process and the same special bid quoting.
or same quoting tool in SQO, so we don't have to learn anything different.
This is
A graphic from an AWS deck that basically says we have a dedicated AWS partner team that is committed to all four of those pillars that we talked about on that partnership slide. And then we have AWS teams, like you guys have teams at the account level that we could also tap into. This is where that ACE registration becomes important, because if you want to have the four in the box of your sellers and then the Ingram sellers and then AWS and IBM, we register in the ACE system. And then we have an IBM AWS team that I'm part of. One advantage that is really, really cool in terms of from a selling perspective is our ability to get POC funding from AWS. I can't tell you how many times in trying to sell software I've gone around shaking the cup and saying, where can we get some funding for this POC and how can we do it in a rapid fashion? Well, when you do this ACE registration, if you need POC funding, there is a mechanism by which AWS will provide 10% of the deal value directly into the customer's AWS account to gen up servers and storage and software to be able to run that POC. So it's a really, really good accelerator for a deal if your client wants to go down a POC route. And then this is sort of a graphic, and we could add a fifth column in here for the VAD too, from an Ingram perspective. But everyone in this motion is really being taken care of, and everyone's being rewarded for the selling motion. First, from a client perspective, we talked about the fact that they want to burn down their EDPs if they have this commitment. A lot of times they've stretched themselves to get these discounts, and they don't really know, how they're going to get to these commitments. This is one way. Even if they've reached the threshold of their commitments, they could drive deeper discounts through a renegotiation of the EDP. So that's a very important value to clients. The budget allocation is already done. A lot of times they don't have to go back through the onerous budget process. And then procurement really likes this. They transact other solutions on the marketplace. It's somewhat of a frictionless environment. It's unified invoicing. It's a whole bunch of different things that procurement likes. So even if they don't have an EDP, they may choose to want to transact on the marketplace. And then we mentioned it before, but it's worth diving into a little bit deeper. We're doing re-engineering work about how quickly can we get these solutions deployed on the AWS infrastructure. So I've heard nightmares about a cloud path for data. That's our sort of data fabric that clients like because it's sort of like a Swiss Army knife, but there's been real nightmare stories about it taking days and weeks and months to be able to efficiently deploy it. Well, we've got it down now with this the templates to be hours, and it's so much better for all the people that have tried to deploy that one solution. So outside of just this effective transaction mechanism, this partnership is bringing value like that in terms of quicker time to value for our clients. For the resellers, right? Laurent had mentioned the incentive stack. That is a very, very handsome incentive stack, and it is different than Partner Plus. But I do want to tell you, the people that engineered this program had Partner Plus in mind when they had done it. So if you look at what you can make in Partner Plus in a special bid situation, you can make 23, 24% on the back end. That's if you're selling to a select client, and that's also if you have a badging or proficiency. This is very simple. It's all up front. It's 25%, right, if you're the first to register, right? And it doesn't matter where you're selling. It doesn't matter if you have a proficiency. So really nice margins. And then paid directly by Amazon, and then access to POC funding, and then all the other things that we talked about that the last three columns share in terms of accelerated deal cycles, account expansion, and increased win rate. IBM sellers get to retire quota on this, and IBM sellers all now have a special SaaS piece of the quota, which they're trying to figure out how they make, right? Because a lot of them default to a perpetual license. Product-led growth is actually making us lean more into the SaaS-based motion. You're going to see much more of an acceleration of SaaS from us, and so we are incenting our sellers to sell SaaS, and this is a major way that they're going to do it. And then AWS sellers like this. It's not a transient workload like some of the workloads they have that gens up and gens down. There's some mission critical workloads that run on IBM software that are sticky and they stay, right? There are special spiffs that AWS sellers have for selling IBM software, special spiffs that they have for selling on the marketplace, and they've really been embracing it. And instead of taking my word for it, before I go for the next slide, your slides are next. You want to talk about how excited the sellers are? This is Mark Lobry, who is my counterpart on the AWS side.
All right. It's really nice. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk. So, as Vinny mentioned, I work for AWS. I'm on our IBM software partnership team, and my role is to work with business partners to do go-to-market and basically win more IBM software on AWS workloads. Just so I can have a little bit of a sense of who's in here, how many of the business partners are already IBM partners? Okay, a handful. How many of you are already AWS partners? Oh, a little bit more. Okay, all right. That's fantastic. That's cool. So then, let me go to the next slide. So what I think is really special about this opportunity is just the sheer magnitude of revenue for business partners. And let me say this, I touch this elephant in a different dimension too, working at AWS. So for a lot of the business partners in here, you know that the benefit of being in our partner program tends to be more around the professional services dimension of being a business partner and less about the resell. When I look at the professional services of modernizing customers and helping them grow their IBM on AWS, it's a $16 billion market in the next 5 to 7 years, and that's on very conservative metrics. So if I was a business partner, that's a lot of green lights for me as far as where I can transform my company and make revenue in these coming years. The AWS reps, this has been probably one of the easiest, partner sales, I wouldn't say easy, but maybe the less hurdles I've ever had to jump through to start working with AWS account executives, because, their goal is to win as much workloads on AWS. They don't tend to, be biased about what that workload is. And a lot of them have whether or not they know IBM personally, but they generally have a respect for how big the IBM business is. And they like to work to help to modernize as many of those workloads onto AWS as possible. So I think you'll have a very good experience in working with the AWS account executives in the field. And then for the for the business partners who aren't already partners of IBM, I think the thing that I'll share that I've learned over the last few months is, the world runs on IBM. As Vinny mentioned, this is where all of the, persistent production workloads live on. And there's very lucrative resale opportunity, as you just saw. And you'll be working on mission critical workloads. If you're in the AWS partner network and you haven't been on IBM, you're probably familiar with a lot of our customers doing science experiments, on the fringes. They're like, oh, how much POC funding or MAP funding, and I'll go into that in a second, can I get to do this science experiment? But when it comes to IBM, these customers are serious. I mean, this is the production stuff, and I think it helps to ingrain you deeper into your customers. So that's why I would definitely consider starting an IBM partnership if you don't already have one as an AWS partner. So when I look at the engagements in the field that I've done my research on, I see kind of 3 sales cycles happening all at one time. You can see it at the top. There's the software, right? Someone's reselling some IBM software. And then there's the AWS infrastructure, which is being sold. And then the professional services to migrate and modernize the customer. So always kind of be thinking about those 3 layers. And one thing that may not have been super clear earlier was around the benefit of selling SaaS versus selling perpetual licenses that you just install on AWS. And the reason why it's better for you guys to sell SaaS is that SaaS number is inclusive of the software license and the infrastructure, right? And so that's why it's a better deal for you guys, even though it's a total cost of ownership lower for the customer, right? It's because in that one, you're getting the resale on software and infrastructure, whereas if you were just doing the perpetual license, you would only get the resale on the software. So that's why it would be bigger. And these are the services I am seeing business partners deliver for their customers in the field and the opportunities that I've done my research on. But what has been most interesting, I think, is just the professional services drag from IBM on AWS. So in the first example I took a look at, IBM Sterling is an order management system, and this national retailer was modernizing their IBM Sterling onto AWS and a few databases. For AWS, there was a $100,000 consumption win, but for the partner, it was $650,000 of professional services. So the pull-through is huge. And on the second one, this was a top 5, it's top 2. You can Google what's the second biggest investment firm in the world. And they were doing a data stage migration, IBM Data Stage, it's their ETL platform. And they're moving that onto AWS. $650,000 to AWS, it was above $2.5 million of partner services. And so that's why even though we see, we think only 60% of IBM workloads may come to the cloud, and AWS is hoping that we are the location that those, workloads land on, the professional services market it's literally factors bigger. And so hopefully you're thinking about that opportunity just as much as you're thinking about the resale of the licenses opportunity. And if you're not familiar with the AWS Partner Program, I just want to maybe just give a kind of a little bit of a shout out for some of the benefits of working with us if you're not already working with us. And you heard me use an acronym. You heard me call MAP, and this is a common acronym in the AWS network, but I'm very conscientious that not everyone knows everyone's acronyms. It stands for Migration Acceleration Program. And so for when you work with IBM, some of the financial benefit, monetary benefit, comes in the form of the resell of the software, the points that you get on the resell. With AWS, it comes in what we call like a percentage of the yearly ARR, annual recurring revenue. And so depending on where you're at in our partner program, you can get cash for the yearly ARR forecast. And so that's where you can start, getting getting a lot of benefit for every opportunity you're working on. And a lot of partners, they have employees who are staffed just to create map opportunities. And that's how they, fund their existence, is by identifying map opportunities. So you'll be able to benefit from the resell, and you'll be able to benefit from the map opportunities. And that's what I had for you. Thanks, Laurent.
So, not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. It's very simple. 2 contracts needed in order to transact on the AWS marketplace. So, for those of you who are not IBM business partners, it's very simple. It's an administrative piece of paperwork that basically allows you to transact on the AWS marketplace, as well as our own Ingram microcloud marketplace. It's called being a cloud marketplace reseller. And we have very easy instructions on how to do that. And in fact, Lindsay is here as well. Lindsay's on our recruit team, so feel free to reach out to Lindsay. President's Club Award winner as well this year. And then the other thing is, from an AWS perspective, is you need to have this status of being CPPO. And again, this is a simple sign up. Go to the website, sign up, and you can become CPPO. So those are the 2 contractual pieces of paper that are required. And from there, you're pretty much good to go, so long as you're an Ingram partner.
So again, as I had said, this is not a motion for all of IBM software, and it's not for perpetual license, but if your client would consider a SaaS or subscription solution to meet their needs, if the solution runs on the AWS marketplace, and I put a link to the seismic page that has the current titles that are on AWS marketplace, and if they have an EDP and they like this to help burn it down, or they would prefer to do a marketplace transaction, then this could be a motion for you.
Yeah, so let me walk you through the mechanics of how this looks at the high level. So for the business partners out there who are already doing IBM business, it's business as usual in step 1, which is you're talking to the client wants a quote, you come to Ingram Micro or to your IBM rep, a special bid is created, we go out and quote you, the business partner reseller. You can go ahead and talk to your client, let them know what the price will be. If everything's good, then at that point what we can do is we can, within the actual marketplace now, we will extend an offer to you, the reseller, within your AWS account. From there, you, the reseller, can turn around and extend a private offer to your client on their AWS account. We don't know what you're selling it for. They don't know what you're buying it for. So all the client will see is an offer privately appear that is only for them in their AWS account number. Once they click to accept, the deal is done. And what's going to end up happening in, let's say 98% of the time, is they'll receive their invoice from Amazon, which will have that lined out as being that transaction, IBM, whatever it was, Mass 360. That will be a part of the invoice. And the end user will then pay the invoice to Amazon, and Amazon will then disperse the cash. So let's say it was a $100,000 Cloud Pak deal. You bought it from Ingram Micro for $75,000. You sold it for $100,000. The margin to the reseller is $25,000. AWS will pay to you $25,000. They will pay $75,000 back to Ingram Micro, and then we will go ahead and pay IBM on the back end. That's the transaction. Is that questions on this, or is that clear? That's it in a nutshell. Okay.
And this is a summary slide. So this is what we talked about. There's sales compensation for everyone in the selling chain. There is an ability to tap into committed spend through these EDPs. AWS will help with the POC funding and with resources. and we've got these quick deployment templates. So we have a couple of minutes. We'll just open up for questions now. Anyone have any questions about this selling motion or the partnership? I also put some useful links in here, so when you get the decks, you can go to some of these links. But we'll be around if there's no questions now, and we're going to hang around after this. But I really appreciate your time and attention. I really appreciate you coming to the session.
Thank you.